Was Ouija considered an innocent parlor game before its portrayal in The Exorcist? Let's look at the history. The usual narrative goes something like this. Ouija was introduced by a toy company in the 1890s and was just considered a fun, innocent parlor game. One even painted by wholesome American icon Norman Rockwell in the 1920s, until its 2.5-minute cameo in The Exorcist, where an uncooperative planchette jumps across the board, and just a few scenes later, Linda Blair's head is spinning around 360 degrees and she's spitting out split-pea soup. The film subtly implying here that her dalliance with Ouija opened the doorway to demonic possession. And only from that moment onward did Ouija adopt its nefarious reputation in American households. But the truth is more nuanced and possibly more disturbing. For starters, Ouija was not exclusively advertised as a toy, even if it was patented as such. It was a commercialized form of talking board that had been invented by spiritualists years before, and Ouija's makers leaned into that mystery, as you can see from these early ads, which explicitly claim the boards have powers of second sight, mind reading, clairvoyance, and some even calling it the Ouija fortune teller and spirit interpreter. So for even its makers, and certainly for many of its users, it was considered far more than a game. Long before Ouija arrived on the scene in the 1890s, spirit communication methods like planchettes, table tipping, and spirit rapping were vilified by evangelicals, and attacks against all of these methods were frequent in books and newspapers from the 1850s onward. Once it became popular, Ouija became the new target for these attacks, so much so that newspaper articles that had assaulted planchettes were merely recycled verbatim, with the newspapers just swapping out the names of those devices. Only a year after its debut, Ouija was already being blamed for insanity amongst its users, sparking condemnation from the Catholic Church, who claimed Ouija boards were, quote, dangerous to the young. And by the 1910s, that whole opening doors you can't close trope, so familiar to modern audiences, was introduced. Even while Norman Rockwell was painting his famous depiction of Ouija during its 1920s heyday, attacks of this nature were commonplace, with many writers claiming, quote, the Ouija board was nothing but an agency of the devil, and, quote, was driving thousands to insanity. This cycle repeated during the wartime Ouija craze of the 1940s, where yet another article reported how Ouija was able to, quote, come in close contact with the powers of the devil, end quote, and that it should be shunned. This image, for instance, dates from 1942. Hell, to debunk the claim that The Exorcist deserves sole credit for villainizing Ouija, one really need look no further than a decade before the film's release. All of the headlines behind me were printed years before the book and film were released. Evangelical pastors literally went on national speaking tours where they advertised themselves holding Ouija while claiming, quote, the Ouija board is a device of the devil, while hundreds of authors and reporters cast Ouija as, quote, a direct